Okay, so welcome to tier 2 of the updated conspiracy theory iceberg. So, like I said before, this is just the updated conspiracy theory iceberg, and it has a lot of topics that were not covered on the main one. And yeah, so now there's two cool things that happen. Is that hopefully within about a month's time, I'll be using like fake face cam, so that will be kind of fun to set up and whatnot. And this like video is also available on Spotify. So just search up Orphillus on Spotify and it should come up as like a podcast. And yeah, it's pretty cool. So now you can I don't know, watch it on or listen to it on the go basically. It's basically just a text sort of or not text, it's basically just an audio platform. And yeah, that's about it. So you can go watch it on Twitter, on Spotify just by searching up Orphillus, and then you can follow that and whatnot. And anyways, let's just get straight into it. COVID-19 was made in a lab. So we know that SARS-CoV-2, or what we call COVID-19, originated naturally from bats in the Wuhan province of China. However, this theory states that COVID-19 did not occur naturally and was actually engineered. So it was discovered that COVID-19 was similar to the rat G13 genome, but it was only 96% identical. So it also had unusual features and genetic sequences which made it seem like it was engineered by humans and not naturally found in bats and then spread to humans through consumption or interaction. So the theory goes more in depth in thinking that China purposefully released the virus for many reasons. So one could be for financial gain, because the virus was halting large scale development in foreign countries, but during this time the Chinese government was still producing. Or from the last video, maybe China was trying to vaccinate its citizens in mass and the vaccine has some sort of chemical or something that can manipulate the people in it. So it may be one of the reasons why the vaccine was pushed so hard in China, as China has the most people vaccinated at 1.24 billion people being vaccinated at this time of recording, and over 3.25 billion doses being given, and it has the highest percentage of any population being vaccinated, which is at 87.9% of the population right now being vaccinated. So COVID-19 might have been made in a lab. It seems very suspect how this virus just popped up randomly and kind of took over the world. Yeah, but it's cool, it's a unique theory. War on Terror was for oil. So this theory goes like this. So the War on Terror, which was an international military campaign launched by the United States government following the September 11 attacks on the World Trade Center and the Pentagon, was only so that America and Britain could get oil from the Middle East, and it allowed them for military expansion within the Middle East, and it only had the quote-unquote appearance of civilian protection to stop terrorist forces like Al-Qaeda from gaining more power. So according to a former US Treasury Secretary, Iraq was discussed in the first National Security Council meeting right after George Bush's inauguration. So during this time, the Bush administration also was discussing plans for war in Iraq and distribution of its oil as early as February 2001. So there were also documents from the DIA, which is the Defense Intelligence Agency, that was mapping Iraq's oil fields and exploration areas and listing large companies or companies in general that might be interested within the oil. So other documents had markings of a super giant oil field in the middle of the eastern region. So even before the quote-unquote war on terror began, the Bush administration was already looking into war in the Middle East as a way for them to get oil and resources easier, as the Middle East has the second largest oil reserves in the world, right behind Venezuela. So this links to tier 1, where 9/11 was an inside job. So this is used as further proof that 9/11 was an inside job, and it was caused by the Bush administration to cause more public hatred and outcry towards the Middle Eastern areas, and that war on terror was artificially created to secure the American military and economic supremacy on a global scale long term. So it was only recently where the US military and troops left the sort of quote-unquote regions. However, that's like a conspiracy theory all by itself, and it was because of Donald Trump where they came to agreement and they had left this. So that's a whole other conspiracy theory. But yeah, so war on terror wasn't, it wasn't to stop terrorist forces, but it was actually just for oil. Cool. It's a cool theory. I like it. It's unique. Yeah. MH370. So the theory goes like this. At 12:42 a.m. on March 8th, 2014, a Boeing 777-200ER operated by Malaysian Airlines took off from Kuala Lumpur and turned towards Beijing, which was its destination, and climbed to its assigned cruising altitude of 35,000 feet. The plane had 227 passengers on board and 12 air staff. So the last communication was at 1:19 a.m. and then the plane's transponder turned off at 1:21 a.m. never to be heard from again.
Good night, Malaysian 370.
So till this day is one of aviation's biggest mysteries, with the deaths of 239 people. So there were two pilots, and one was a person called Farid Hamid, the first officer who was flying the airplane, and he was 27 years old at the time of this flight. And this was a training flight for him, which was the last training flight that he would have until he would become a fully certified pilot. And his trainer, who was a pilot in command, was a man named Zahari Ahmed Shah, so he was 53 and was one of the most senior captains at Malaysian Airlines during this time. So he was married and he had like 3 children, and he had sort of like a quote unquote perfect life. Like he was making a lot of money, he was an airline pilot, and he flew. So he had a really elaborate Microsoft Flight Simulator in his house during this time. So this is like 2013, 2014, and during this time, like he had an incredibly expensive sort of flight simulator that he had, and he would run like multiple tests on it because flying was his sort of passion, but also his like job as well. So he really just loved to use it. So before the flight happened, Shah had used a flight simulator. So his flight simulator simulated a flight path like the one similar to the one that MH370 took. And then Shah had deleted all these logs, but then they were still managed to be recovered by the government when they did the investigation. So as time went on, more and more information was released about Shah, and many people around him during this time said that he was like incredibly depressed and sad and sort of in like a lonely state. So during this time before this, Shah's wife had moved into the other house that he owned, and she was living there, and he would just spend most of his time in his house just pacing around, not really knowing what to do, just coming home and then going back on trips with not a lot really to do. So the theory goes like this, that Shah had actually committed suicide by taking control of the plane and either flying until the fuel ran out or by going straight into the ocean. So in July 2015, which is about a year after this incident took place, the first piece of debris was found off the coast of the island of Reunion. So this piece was a flaperon that helps to stabilize the plane during low speed flying during takeoff and landing. Another theory is that the plane was shot down by the USA to seize equipment that was headed to China. So a part of this theory is that there is a US airbase pretty close to the place where MH370's last and final contact was. So people assume that maybe the plane had something on it that it really shouldn't have, and then the USA found out about it and then shot the plane down. Or there is another part to this, is that the plane was hijacked for some reason and flown off for some reason. So there is another theory that the US military owns a sort of device where they can take control of aircraft from anywhere, and it allows them to basically completely shut out the other people who are on the plane and take control. So maybe this was just a sort of test where the USA was just sort of testing out maybe this sort of thing, and they were unable to give back control, and then something happened like this. So it's a very unique theory, and there's a lot of information. I suggest do your own research, but truly is one of the most tragic things to ever happen. Usually the most simplest answer is the correct one, and there's an incredibly high chance that nearly every single person passed away, and because of that it's incredibly tragic to see the deaths of over 239 people. That at such a large scale calamity, it's not just one person, it's not just 239 people that were affected, it's the thousands of people that know them, like all of the families and friends and relatives of these people. Every single person was affected. So the probably real number is really in the hundreds of thousands of people were affected by this. And yeah, it's incredibly, sad, and it's crazy to think that in our time of technology, where a huge flying metal can just disappear off the face of the earth, and only a single tiny piece of like metal equipment can be found of it, with all the radars and the sensors that we have, and all the, like, this was one of the world's biggest investigations done, and still nothing was found. And the only thing that was found was a piece of debris on the edge of an island. So, all we can do is kind of just hope that one day these families manage to get some reconciliation and get some official answers as to what happened, because right now they're still in the sort of grieving process where they don't really have any conclusions, and they might be just, I don't know, waiting. Like one day something might happen and that people might come home, but it is incredibly unlikely. But it's incredibly sad at the same time. But anyways, this is a sort of sad theory, I guess, where it contains like the deaths of a lot of people. But that's true for a lot of theories. This one has like a specific death count, but for a lot of things like weapons of mass destruction and Bush, the total like number of bodies was like estimated to be around 250,000 people have been killed because of the sort of interference by the USA into this country. So all we can do is just kind of hope that these things sort of get figured out over time. And we're putting it into conspiracy theory, but there are real people whose lives have been affected forever because of these things that we are now talking about in the conspiracy theory. So yeah, Hitler ran to Argentina. So at the end of World War II, more than 30,000 Nazis fled to South America, and it said that Adolf Hitler was among them. So as the story goes, Hitler committed suicide in April 1945. However, his body was never found. So the theory goes like this: a person called Martin Bormann helped Hitler escape from Nazi Germany to Argentina by submarine, and then Hitler continued to live on in Argentina until his real death in 1962. So this was sort of also corroborated by people that lived in Argentina at the time and knew of the sort of like Hitlers, i.e. Hitler and his wife, living in like a mansion in Patagonia, which is in Argentina. So rather than committing suicide, he just committing suicide, he just ran off to Argentina with his wealth that he had as sort of like the Reich and the ruler of Germany for like the longest time. And yeah, so it's also I feel like every single theory is just unique now, but yeah, it's a really unique theory. But there's a whole documentary that you can actually go and watch on it, and it's pretty cool. I suggest looking into it, but it's a really cool theory. Anyways, okay, so I've been trying to record this one silly clip for like about an hour now. It's been an hour. I keep on deleting it, but I don't know why. I'm just like freaking out for some reason. I don't know why. Let's just get into it. Let's see if I can just do it this time. Oh my god, I'm so tired. Anyways, WMDs and Bush. So WMDs are weapons of mass destruction that are nuclear, radiological, chemical, or biological in nature. So these are things that can cause like immense damage to a sort of very large area. So you have your nuclear weapons and you have your sort of like your viruses and whatnot. So Bush started the war on terror, and one of the reasons for doing so was the claim that Saddam Hussein had a massive stockpile of biological weapons. However, a CIA director called George Tenet noted in early 2004 that the CIA had stated that they have no specific information on the types or quantities of weapons that Saddam Hussein had, and the claim was just sort of used as a fear-mongering tactic. So also in December 2002, before the CIA's press release, Bush stated that they do not know whether or not Iraq has a nuclear weapon. So basically Bush straight up lied about weapons of mass destruction in the hands of Saddam Hussein to basically fearmonger people and to have an advance in the sort of Middle Eastern territory, further corroborating the idea that the Bush administration was only sort of interested in the oil and other natural resources and not really on the war on terror in the Middle East. Not in the war on terror, but not really interested in sort of the little organizations that have like Al Qaeda and sort of other like things that were happening, and they were just interested in oil and natural resources and all of the other things that happened, sort of 9/11 and sort of fear mongering, and all of these things were just done as a way to gain easier access to sort of Iraq and Iran and get their sort of oil. So cool. NK and the USA refers to the sort of alliance / common enemyship of the USA and North Korea. So for years at this point, the USA and North Korea have seemed to have a really difficult relationship and are in constant opposition to each other. So the theory goes like this: is that one of the main issues that North Korea has is North Korea has nuclear weapons and constantly threatens other countries such as South Korea, with military tests happening quite often in North Korea. So the theory states that USA doesn't actually want North Korea to give up the nuclear weapons that they have, so the USA has a sort of reason to keep military assets and bases in South Korea and Japan as a sort of security plan for these two countries. So the theory also says that all of the sanctions and talks that are happening in both countries are just completely faked, and so they're both in on it and they're both faking it, or the USA demands so much from North Korea that they know that they will never ever accept it, so it basically just allows them to keep military bases and operations in countries they either have absolutely no reason whatsoever to be in. So such as like Japan and South Korea, like the US has no reason to be there, but then North Korea has weapons. We need to like make sure they don't have the weapons. Let's go put bases in like Japan and South Korea. There you go. It's all fine. So so that's why they kind of maybe just coerce sort of North Korea with sort of trade deals and things that North Korea needs as a way just to basically keep control of military bases within a country, so if they ever need to, they can do whatever they need to do in those sort of countries. Like if they ever need to get rid of someone or do something crazy, or if there's ever war and they need to advance into another territory, it's already much easier if they have bases set up. So this is one of the reasons why, and the reasons for is just North Korea has weapons, so we need to just stay here and protect. Yes, cool. Big oil. Oh my god. Okay, so big oil is such a big conspiracy theory. Like the whole thing is just a conspiracy theory, basically. Like literally. So basically, big oil is made up of hundreds of companies, but like a few main ones are sort of Saudi Aramco and British Petroleum like BP and the sort of Exxon Corporation. So one part of the conspiracy theory is that recently the oil corporations have been like steadily increasing prices purposefully so they can increase the amount of profit they can make. So a part of this is that during the COVID-19 pandemic, barrels of oil were being sold for negative value. So basically, companies were paying to get rid of the barrels of oil they have at an incredibly large rate, causing like a lot of big oil companies to sort of lose money. And these sort of oil companies have been sort of running the world for like a little while, and they had to lose billions of dollars just because all of these companies were like, just because of the industry crashed. So during this time, a lot of like sort of cruise companies were just selling off oil, and they didn't really have anywhere to store it because it cost money and people, and they didn't want to like pay those people this whole time to stay and like do all the things. So that's like a part of the conspiracy theory. So another part of this theory is that big oil has been sort of suppressing new alternatives new alternative methods of energy, so that the oil can be sold sort of to other companies and they can basically make money. So this is anywhere from not funding more projects for alternatives like purposefully, or killing off people who might seem to have come up with like sort of new types of fuel sources or new ideas. So a part of this conspiracy theory is the incredibly suspicious death of a person called Stanley Meyer. So Stanley Meyer was a scientist and he worked for like many notable projects. One was like the Gemini project, which was the second spaceflight program from NASA, and like a bunch of other like government things. So during his life, supposedly he made a car that ran off of water instead of any sort of other fuel such as electricity or gasoline. So this was supposed to be an incredibly groundbreaking innovation and technology during this time, and this would like rapidly replace conventional means of propulsion. So at the beginning of this innovation, Stanley Meyer passed away. So he said that he was being poisoned and died because he was trying to be suppressed. So this is like used as proof that his mysterious death was by big oil trying to suppress the information that he had or could possibly have. So yeah, so he literally was just in a restaurant eating food and he just straight up like leaving. He was like, I'm getting poisoned or they're trying to kill me, and then he died. And it's really tragic. So that's why people really think that big oil is really just suppressing a lot of things. And then sort of another part of this theory is that oil companies have like for years now have been paying scientists and sort of like magazine people and sort of just publicists in general to sort of edit data to downplay the effect they might be having on the earth and sort of global warming. So in the 1990s, the Exxon Corporation ran ads like, if the earth is getting warmer, then why is Kentucky getting colder, as like a sort of way to downplay the true impact they were having on the earth. So another aspect of this conspiracy theory is that big oil is in line with the government and they sort of work together to like make lots of money and keep oil dominance. So such as like during the 2000s and 2010s, before ISIS ever approached the sort of incredibly oil rich areas in Iraq, they were barely ever mentioned in the news and they were incredibly sort of unnoticed. But as soon as they entered the area, they were like which had the oil fields, they were constantly in the news, and the US instantly interfered and sent drones to strike ISIS members and ISIS targets, so most possibly as a deterrent to stop ISIS from advancing any further so the US can maintain ownership of the oil lands. So basically, oil companies been doing a lot of shady stuff for years now that they're constantly trying to stay on top of. The sad thing, sort of oil is not sad thing. The good thing is that sort of oil is just sort of I don't know the correct way to put it, but like a sort of crumbling infrastructure where, it will be around for the next, I'm gonna say at least 30 years, but as time goes on, they will just completely lose relevancy because there's like a limited amount of oil that you can mine, and they will pivot into sort of new other companies, into sort of bioenergy companies where they work on like sort of renewable energy and different types of fuel sources to make money, and they will completely just dominate those markets. So you have these sort of companies like BP, and they will just sort of just dominate all of these sort of markets. And yeah, that's why Saudi Aramco is sort of funded by the government and stuff, and they are pivoting to sort of a tourism based sort of model where Saudi has recently like gone a very, very big tourism shift, and same with a bunch of other like of these countries such as Qatar, and sort of Dubai has just had that for the last 20 years basically, where these countries that were not commonly like welcome to outsiders are now trying to get incredibly welcome for outsiders, to the point where they're changing their whole infrastructure just so they can shift, and because they know it's a sort of dying sort of area. But there's been a lot of shady stuff from oil companies. I would suggest do a lot of research from this. It's a lot going on with oil companies. But anyways, let's move on. CIA and AIDS. So, in 1981, when the Center for Disease Control and Prevention reported the AIDS epidemic, there was a theory that the CIA created the virus to wipe out homosexual people and African Americans during that time. So, it was assumed that this virus was sort of created in 1971 when Richard Nixon combined the National Cancer Institute and the Biowarfare Department to work on sort of mass genocide projects to quote unquote remove certain people in an easier way. So this theory has gained a lot of traction from South African like President Thabo and a bunch of other like really really famous politicians and stuff. It's a unique conspiracy theory. I'd say like just do your own research on this. It's pretty cool, but you know it is tragic if it is true. Then yeah. Anyways, moving on. Denial. So Holocaust denial is exactly how it sounds. People denying the Holocaust. So for people who don't know what the Holocaust was, it was the genocide of European Jews during World War II. So between 1941 and 1945, Nazi Germany and sort of it's like other countries and collaborators systematically murdered around about 6 million Jews across Germany occupied Europe, which was 2/3 of Europe's Jewish population. So Holocaust deniers state that Jews use lies and extortion to gain an advantage or sympathy of other people. So basically the Holocaust didn't happen and about 3.5 million people, Jewish people, decided to lie about the Holocaust is sort of this idea. Yeah. Okay, so this is just I have no idea. John Lennon died. So this is what John Lennon died, and this is incredibly confusing to find any information on because, well, as far as you know, John Lennon, who was the leader of the Beatles, and basically the Beatles was just a sort of like group of musicians in the 1970s. Like for anyone who didn't know, did die on December 8th, 1980. So as far as it goes, John Lennon was killed by Mark Chapman, who was a sort of crazy Beatles fan and basically thought that John Lennon had become sort of too famous and was in a sense more popular than like Jesus. So basically crazy fanboy killed him. So I'm not exactly sure what the conspiracy theory is, but I did find two things and one thing what I found was that John Lennon was killed by Stephen King, like the Stephen King, so the writer who wrote, you know, The Shining, Shawshank Redemption, and It. And so basically, like Stephen King looks similar to Mark Chapman, so therefore people are like, you know, they believe Stephen King killed Mark Chapman for some reason. Sorry. So like Stephen King killed John Lennon for some reason. You know, that's as far as I could like find on that conspiracy theory. But another conspiracy theory is that, you know, he didn't actually die, so he had just faked his death, and it was like just sort of fake bullets where he didn't actually die during this time, and he sort of just ran away to start a new life and just wanted to fake his own death. But there wasn't really any sort of like evidence I could find for that. But yeah, that's as far as I could find out about this conspiracy theory. But basically Mark Chapman did confess about him killing John Lennon. So that's as far as I could find, and he has been in prison since the night of the murder, and he did try to get parole I think twice, but it was denied. And yeah, so he's been in prison since the night of the murder, so it's not really a lot more to talk about that. So anyways, thank you guys for watching. This was tier 2 of the conspiracy theory iceberg. I'm gonna try and make it better, but now you can like listen to this on Spotify and whatnot. It's pretty cool. And yeah, thank you guys for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed, and goodbye. Right, so just before I ended, I just wanted to like apologize for a few things in this video that I might have said incorrectly. So whilst I was recording this video, I was like I just hadn't drank any water all day, so my body was like drinking some water, but then I just kept on trying to record. So I think at the end I was like, yo, I can't even record this because I'm like freaking out. Like not freaking out, but I was just like being really weird and I couldn't record it properly. But hopefully now it's absolutely fine and this video gets uploaded and whatnot. It's currently 3 a.m. I'm finishing just editing this. Follow the Twitter, I guess, and like Spotify and subscribe and whatnot, you know, all those things. But damn, this was long. Anyways, thank you guys for watching, and actually goodbye.